friends. Welcome to episode 243 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian, in my 17th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources, so whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast is something for you. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started with today's conversation. First of all, friends, October is going to be a little busy for several reasons, all of which are good, but it may mean that I might not have an episode every week, and that's okay. For anyone who is curious, the last break I took was in March when I presented at New Hampshire's state conference. I do invite you to peruse the playlists which have evolved over the years. You can always find a link in the show notes of each episode. I encourage you to bookmark them, as I've heard from some librarians tuning in while weeding your collection or your garden that it can be entertaining. The playlists include many different topics. Some of the playlists you'll find will be Librarian Bucket List, Putting Ourselves First, Weeding and Genreification, Building Our PLN, Getting a Job, Makerspace, End of Year, Rookie and First Year, Graphic Novels, Manga and Anime, High School, Middle School, Elementary, as well as playlists focusing on censorship and advocacy, volunteers and collection development, and all the different types of programmings which involve putting our students first, as well as digital citizenship, overcoming obstacles, which is a very long playlist, by the way. All our roles, virtual, distance, and remote episodes, which hopefully we won't have to listen to anytime soon. There are many episodes in the Reading Culture playlist, as well as the We Are Teachers, as well as author visits, programming, librarians outside of the United States. I guarantee, friends, there are plenty of episodes just waiting for you to enjoy. Something else I wanted to bring to your attention and is brand new in our show notes starting today is a search by reference sheet, which includes every episode title, guest, and their location. So this is a Google sheet, which you can do a simple F search. And if you don't see yourself or your state or country, consider this an opportunity to join me in recording an episode. And if that is the case, you'll find many of your questions answered in the FAQs, which coincidentally also is linked in the show notes. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Friends, be sure to listen to episode 224. I announced a new sponsorship with Literati Book Fairs, and now is a chance to hear from Literati's team member, Mike. Michael Murata, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
You know, Michael, in your opinion, what do you feel sets Literati Book Fairs apart from, say, other book fair experiences?
Sure. I think what Literati does really well is we have a full focus on the books themselves. So you see with other book fair companies, they might have like little trinkets and knickknacks and things like that at their book fairs. We do have what we call our reading and writing center. So we do have pens, erasers, and journals and notebooks. And those still promote literacy, but what we really want to focus on is getting books into the hands of kids. So we do promote our books far and away more than we do any other product on our fair.
Sometimes I think as somebody who has had some tears at other book fairs where students have wanted and pleaded with their families to buy the stuffed animals. And, I think at one point there were some video games out on the counter. It was like, no. And, I think that I appreciate, especially not just as a librarian, but also as a parent, that when your child is given an opportunity to spend money on books, and they are sort of distracted by all these things that are not books, it really does present a challenge. So I appreciate it. I feel like Literati is also thinking of the parents in the equation, saying, we're going to just help everybody out. What is the most unique problem that you've helped a librarian solve during their book fair experience?
So one does come to mind. We worked with a Title I school out in California, and this Title I school received some funds from their district that they had to spend right away. The problem with that was their book fair was still a couple months away. So what we were able to do for them is we were able to open their e-fair a little bit early, so they were able to log into their e-fair, buy some gift cards with those Title I funds, and then turn those gift cards into books for each student in their school. They were able to use those gift cards to make purchases for all those students at the book fair.
See, I wouldn't even ask that question. Like, that wouldn't even occur to me like, oh, here's a problem. Oh, maybe I should just find out if Literati can help out. That's fantastic. Michael Murata, thank you so much for joining us. I just feel better equipped to tell listeners about Literati Book Fair and especially from somebody like yourself who is behind the scenes and really has a good sense of what's going on day to day at Literati.
Absolutely, Amy. Thank you so much for having me. And we'll always be there for our customers, and we're always available for them.
Have a great day.
You too.
Be sure to tune in to learn all about Literati and their very generous offer. Librarians who book their very first Literati book fair for this upcoming school year and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card to Tidal Wave. Visit the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team today to see if you qualify. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I am so excited to be working with them. I am grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 6. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for our episode, Emerging Leaders, and my conversation with Brandi Veal, Brittany Sharitz, Cybele Garcia Kohel, and Sara Levine. Brandi Veal, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Amy. I'm so happy to be here.
Brandi, you and I met at ALA's annual conference in Chicago this past summer, and this was already your second ALA annual conference. You were going to be presenting a poster session with your emerging leader cohort. I am so glad that you introduced yourself.
Funny enough, we actually met for the first time at AASL when it was in Utah. We met touring the Utah Public Library, the Salt Lake City Public Library. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh my gosh. You know what? That was... And I'm going to tell you right now, that was our first day that we were in Utah, and I was so jet lagged. I shouldn't be, but I'm an Eastern Standard Time, and I'll tell you what, that was a fun day. Friends, and this is an absolute luxury, but if you can get into the town when you are a day in advance and just have your travel, that's when you get to be a tourist and do all those things while the conference is still getting sort of set. That was a real treat. Now, I did not choose to use the little scooters. I don't have a death wish, but and I like to keep my body intact. But no, that was a beautiful, beautiful public library. And I'll tell you what, I just had a smile plastered on my face. I think we were still masked. That was 2021. I'm pretty sure we were all still masked. I'm sorry. Yes, we did meet.
No worries. I'm sure you meet a lot of people, and those scooters were memorable.
Yes. I think I want to tie this back into this conversation on emerging leaders, because 2021 was the first AASL annual conference I ever attended. Friends, I started teaching in the library in 2007. Now, you want to talk about professional regret? Is that I never attended AASL, the national conference, until what was that year? I want to say 15, year 15 for me. I mean, what a missed opportunity to be a leader at the national stage. And, you folks have already done so much more in the first 5 years of your careers as school librarians. And I'm so excited. Friends, what you don't know is we've got a whole group here today. So, let's go ahead. Brandi, why don't you let listeners know, describe for everyone where in the country you work, tell us about your current library, what kinds of programs you offer, and what grades you support.
So I am located in Northern California, and I work at a comprehensive 9 through 12 high school. I'm actually starting my 3rd year this year. It has been an absolutely great opportunity working there. I really spent my first 2 years really working on building teacher relationships outside of the library, really focusing on collection development so I could get the students in, and then of course, student relationships. And so now that I have those things established in my library, I'm able to focus more on community outreach. So this year, I'm really excited that I am working with administrators and other teaching staff and students to start our site's first equity team. And so I'm really excited about that because personally, for me in the library, this is why I got into education. So seeing out how I can take my role as librarian and try to nurture these relationships to help bring them in to really make sure that my high school is really looking at every student for all their needs. And so I'm really excited to be working on that this year.
Yeah, I am. And I'm telling you right now, I'm thinking that listeners are pretty excited about the idea of an equity team. And equity sort of came up as a theme in my last episode with Patricia Alvarado. And what I'd really like to do is have that episode on equity and what we do to bring that to our entire community, our entire school community writ large. Thank you so much. Friends, I am so excited. Today we have the emerging leaders of 2023, and we're going to learn about this team right now. Let's start with Brittany.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Brittany Sharitz. I work at a public suburban high school in the greater St. Louis area in Chesterfield, to be specific. And in our high school, we have over 2,200 students and over 200 teachers and staff members. I am lucky enough to work in a library where there are 2 full-time librarians and even a 0.2 library contract, and I have a library aide. So I have lots of phenomenal coworkers to support me so that we can do some pretty incredible things. We have about 600 visitors a day, and I probably work with, on average, between 10 and 12 different classes a week. So that could be language arts, social studies. We work a lot with a class called Freshman Seminar, which is study skills for incoming students. We run a variety of book clubs with a kind of teen advisory group leading a lot of that. But then we try to pull our staff in a lot too. And we do like feature teacher book clubs. We create book buzz videos. It's just really awesome because there's such a great team there to work together and accomplish so much.
I love this idea of getting in on the ground floor with those freshmen, and especially this idea of study skills, because, and I'll be honest, for us, our incoming 9th graders, our 8th graders do not have access to the same kind of digital resources that we have at the high school. That makes all the sense in the world. I love that. Oh, friends, I am getting ideas, and we haven't gotten to the next question. All right, how about Cybele? Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Cybele Garcia Kohel. I work in Southern California at a public elementary school. We are a preschool, TK, kinder through 5th school. And we are also a dual language school and a Title I school. So for those of you who may not know what that means the majority of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. I am so happy to be the librarian where my son went to school. And our library has actually been in there. It's one of the oldest in the district. It's just amazing to work with and see the kindergartners be able to grow into using their literacy skills and digital literacy skills and information literacy skills, because I came up with my own curriculum to sort of support what I should be doing, what I should be teaching. So I kind of came up with my own stuff.
But I do want to follow up, because I do ask folks who are in dual language immersion programs, when you have your world language books, do you interfile them with their books in English, or do you have your world language books in another part of your collection?
Very good question, Amy. Yeah, we have about 75% English and 25% Spanish collection. The Spanish collection is separate from the English collection. However, because we have a diversity of people who speak English and Spanish in our school, we have a dual language Spanish track, and we also have an English only track. So we have one track of classes that are just English, and then we have a track that's dual language immersion Spanish. So we have even dual language books in the English section that have both English and Spanish in them, because we are predominantly Latino community, and a very diverse community as well. On top of that, even students that are in the English only, many of them have families who do speak Spanish, and they also enjoy dual language books. So we have kind of both but the books that are strictly Spanish do have their own space.
I love that. I think that's wonderful. So last but not least, I want to learn all about Sara. Sara, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having us. So I'm Sara Levine. I am also in St. Louis, not too far away from Brittany, but in a different district. Funny enough, we had never met before this experience. We've gone to the same conferences and stuff like that, but we had never met. So it was really cool to travel all the way to New Orleans and find someone in my own community. So it was pretty fun. But I'm in a K-5 elementary school, and prior to becoming a librarian, I was a classroom teacher for 14 years in different districts. So jumping into the library role was just such an amazing experience for me. What's interesting is that my first year, so this is my 5th year in the library now, and my first year in the library was the first year that my district decided to make sure that every elementary school had a full-time librarian. Prior to that year, it was a shared position between 2 schools. And so it was amazing to be able to step into the role and kind of teach teachers what a library, like having a full-time librarian, can really benefit the curriculum and their teaching and just provide enormous support to them. And so similar to Brandi, building those relationships with teachers and with students and with admin, and showing them all the different things that the library can provide. And it's not just a place to check out books. It's been really fun being able to have a flexible schedule, to bring classes in to do things that they never thought they would do in the library, like stop motion animation or 3D printing, doing like a whole graphic novel book club. And so it's been a lot of fun building those relationships and building up the library curriculum. I am lucky to have 9 other librarians in my district who really value time together and meeting and developing ideas together. And so that's been just a wonderful experience.
I think what's wonderful is that as emerging leaders, and we're going to go into that definition in a minute, you all have a very strong awareness of just how lucky you are in the strengths that your program can offer. So I'm curious because, just to follow up on what you were saying, Sara, I love that graphic novels are so important in your program, but could you give listeners an idea of something that you did recently to remind teachers of the value of graphic novels?
So we are able within my district to have staff-led professional development, and me along with another librarian, we got together and we had a whole course on, it was titled Are Graphic Novels Real Books? And we talked about all the different, reading strategies that go along with reading graphic novels that you might not even use when you're reading chapter books. And so, providing teachers with this, knowledge now where they think that graphic novels are not as strong reading materials as, chapter books. When you have a teacher that comes in and says, you have to get a chapter book, you can't get a graphic novel, and it just breaks my heart. And so providing teachers the experience to understand how you read graphic novels and how it benefits students and student learning, but then also collaborating with teachers to do like book clubs with students that feature graphic novels.
That's like a home run. I mean, you've just described something. And again, I love that all of you have these things that are important to you. You're championing them. You are making sure that your buildings know about them. So let's start with the application process for emerging leaders, because what brought all of you together this past year, it was this Emerging Leaders Program. And I know that there are listeners tuning in. We have a lot of very new librarians to the profession, and for whom this would be a really wonderful program. I know I've aged out of it. Some of us were senior members of the community. Before we dive into today's conversation, I think listeners should know, because not everybody can be an emerging leader. Would you let us know, how about Brittany, would you share with us the criteria by which one can even apply to be an emerging leader?
Yeah, so it's kind of, included in the name. You do have to be emerging. And what that means is they're really looking for people with fewer than 5 years of experience working professionally in a library of any type. Because, yes, you're talking to all school librarians today, but there were groups that were academic, public librarians. They do want to include all different types of libraries in this program. You just have to be a little green. You have to have less than 5 years of experience in that field. And then the other big criteria is you have to be willing to attend both of ALA's large conferences. So, what they used to call midwinter, but now is Lib Learn X, and then their big, national conference in the summer. And you have to be able to work virtually between the winter and summer conference on an assigned project as well.
Well, and yes, because friends, it's not just showing up. I think that's sort of the reward. That's the big reward for doing all the work that you do. But yes, this is not just a little something you get a plaque and get to celebrate. There's a whole lot of work involved. So let's go ahead and talk about, Sara, would you let us know a little bit about the application process?
Yeah, so the application process is kind of like applying for a job. You have to fill out your years of experience. You have to promise that you're within the first 5 years of your library career. And then you share a few narratives about like professional successes, leadership philosophies, qualities, and how you've applied them as a librarian already. Also share about the role of the library in the fields of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then what you hope to gain from being part of this program. And then you submit your resume and 2 letters of recommendation, and then send it all off.
And, again, you're sort of putting in the work on the front end and just crossing your fingers. I guess what I'm curious about, did you know what the turnaround was? I appreciate, friends, the applications are due in September. How long before you found out if you were accepted into the program?
It took a little bit. I think I was surprised.
I think it was October. I think we were notified in October, and then you had like 2 weeks to accept and submit a headshot. because then you really needed to get signed up for that midwinter conference in January.
Wow, that's nice. I mean, as somebody who has applied to present at a conference, and I'd go months before I heard anything. Absolutely. That's fantastic. All right, Cybele, how about you give us an idea? What are some of the expectations of being the emerging leader? Because I think that there is work involved. And I think that I think that's really important to go and get a little detail about.
Yes, there is work involved. And I think Brittany has already even outlined it pretty well. We attend Live, Learn, Next. We attend the main conference. And in between there, we did every other week, we had a Zoom meeting where we worked on a project. And because we obviously are school librarians and worked on a project for AASL, we did something that was related to learning and library work. So our project in particular was we made an activity guide for inquiry-based learning as applied to library visits for school-age K-12 students. I guess that wasn't the only thing that we did. We created a video. We did a number of things together, an infographic, right? Basically, the expectation was that in our case, and that is how our team was guided through the process by the AASL supportive team. We had one teacher librarian kind of as a coach, Courtney Lewis. And then we also had someone from AASL helping our team make sure we met our deadlines, Stephanie. And I'm forgetting her last name. Does anybody want to jump in with us? Book. How can I forget that? Stephanie Book. And so anyway, they supported our team and made sure that we had questions, answered. And, so AASL had an idea for what they wanted us to do. And this wasn't the case for all teams, but I think I think it was a great experience because we really got to cut our teeth in not only working together long distance, creating just activity after activity after activity, for librarians to be able to actually use hands-on, information for librarians to use. And also, we even created forms and, materials that went along with the activity guide as well, which are all able, anyone can download them from the AASL site. So it was incredibly satisfying to see the end result. And obviously AASL has the greatest graphic designers and the greatest, editors. And so that piece of it was it's so professional and beautiful, but also so easy to use and very useful.
Well, and friends, we're going to include links in the show notes to the finished product, your magnum opus, which our team put together. And, you say things like deadlines, and my heart just goes, oh, that got real, because you sign up to do something with people who are not like you don't see every day at work, and there are deadlines involved. And, I'm thinking, the bar is pretty high here, because you have signed up for something that is and you volunteered, by the way, you put yourself out there. But I love the fact that when you put something together as school librarians, and friends, this, that whenever another school librarian does something, that you can put a great deal of faith that it's been done well. and it's been scrutinized. And it's been scrutinized by a librarian who is really going to be the toughest critic in the crowd when you are looking to put together resources that are then going to be used by other school librarians. We're very judgy people. I'd love to know what instigated your application process to the Emerging Leader Program. Was there like a lightning bulb moment, or did somebody suggest this was something you should do? Let's go ahead and, Brandi, can I ask you, why don't you get the ball rolling here? What was it that got you started with this process?
Well, for me, it was really two things. The first thing is during grad school, I was lucky enough to become an ALA Spectrum Scholar. And that program was still is one of the most fulfilling professional experiences of my life. Just being able to be in a room. Well, we know that this field is majority white women. And while I have found lots of support among my peers, it was such a wonderful experience. I have never had before or since to be in the same room with a bunch of librarians who either look like myself or just were ethnically diverse, as well as other teacher librarians specifically, because personally I am lucky enough to work in a school district that does have other high school librarians. However, I'm the only one of color. And so through those connections, I just felt really fulfilled. And so during that program, they did speak about the Emerging Leader Institute. And I am personally just very much about professional learning and building my network, because I personally believe there are no greater people than librarians. So just surrounding myself with librarians is always great. So definitely that experience. But I also received, I finished my master's program in 2020. So I wasn't really looking to start jobs right then, because I have personal obligations that just didn't really make it safe for me at that time. And so I was like, I really need to keep my my resume up to date and still be involved in the library field. So I started volunteering with my state organization, and through my state organization just really started building my network. And me and a colleague that I know through my state organization, we decided to apply together. And Kate Appleby, shout out, because she was also an emerging leader in this class, just different project.
I love that. Friends, you can be sure that throughout the conversation, if other resources become apparent, we'll make sure to include those in the show notes. Absolutely fantastic. So how about you, Brittany? Can you tell us what inspired you to at least apply for this process and hope for the best?
Yeah, so I've actually been in education. Well, at the time I had been in education for 14 years and really looking for ways to grow professionally. I was only in my third year being a librarian, and I do have national board teaching certification. So I've been through some challenging applications and programs before. Also in the state of Missouri, we have something called the DESE Exemplary Library Program, which you apply through our education, our state education department, and it has, I want to say it's over 21 different areas that they require you to provide evidence, and then it's very hard to get that title of being an exemplary library. So we went for that my second year being a librarian with my school library, and we actually got it. And so I just decided to keep the momentum going and apply to be an emerging leader. I remembered hearing about it from my master's classes, and I was an ALA member. So just keeping up with their emails when I saw that application pop up. I didn't really have anyone mention it to me. I actually have reached out to our lead librarian of our school district, and she said no one in our district, which is pretty large, has ever done it before. So I just put my name in and decided to see what would happen, and I encourage anyone else who's in those first few years to do the same thing.
Okay, so clearly this glutton for punishment is going to be a continuing theme. I have found consistently across the board that school librarians oftentimes throw themselves into things that only make their lives just a little bit more complicated. And friends, I will share this little tidbit right now. These lovely library leaders are with me on a glorious Saturday morning. There are so many other things we all could be doing, and yet this is how we are spending some important time today and sharing this with everybody. But this is a recurring theme here. How about you, Sara? What got you excited about applying for this process?
Well, like you said, like librarians are kind of glutton for punishment. We're always learning. We're always looking for things that will help us just be more supportive and help us grow as leaders and learners. And so my lead librarian in the district, she saw it and she said, "Sara, this looks like it's right up your alley. I think you should go for it." And so she really encouraged me. I was like, "I don't know, this is going to be a lot of work probably." She's like, "Yeah, but I think you got this." And so yeah, she's the one who really encouraged me. My administrators pushed me forward, and because part of the process is like, you have to commit to going to these conferences, and so I had to get the approval of my principal, but also like the higher ups in my district admin to say, yes, we will fly you to New Orleans and we will send you to Chicago and we'll pay for you to attend these conferences. And, with that immense support from my district, it really pushed me forward.
It can't be overstated the importance of how our administrators regard us as leaders in the school community, because in allocating that kind of financial support to their librarians, that message is a really important one. And I know that there are listeners who are tuning in right now who are like, wow, must be nice. I don't know what that's like. So, all right, let's go ahead. How about you, Cybele? Cybele, would you give us an idea of what, got you excited about being part of this program?
Sure. I do have to say that I'm one of those people who say, gosh, wow, what is that like? Because I'm actually a part-time librarian. See, this is my third year of being a school librarian. And our district doesn't have that kind of support, doesn't have any training for me. I can't apply for a grant to go, to professional development. That just isn't there. We barely have school librarians in elementary schools. We don't have a district librarian either. So that is actually what prompted me to apply, because I thought, well, someone out there is doing this differently. I need to see what that looks like. It's great to be able to have been able to do that, to know that I can turn around to my school district and say, hey, this is how things are done elsewhere. What should we be doing? I am getting my MLIS right now through San Jose State University. And one of the things I did was, one of my classes was a library advocacy class. And my project, along with a team of students, was to advocate for school libraries in California. Because of that experience, I learned about CSLA, our state association, and then AASL. I learned through that experience. I wanted to see how things were done.
It absolutely does. And unfortunately, what I have become very aware of in interviewing school librarians from across the country and around the world is that, unfortunately, some states have much stronger programs when it comes to recognizing the value of school librarians top to bottom, because I don't see why the state like California, and I'm just going to call you out right now because this is something I've heard out before, elementary, apparently so in elementary, we don't need certified school librarians because they're little. That expertise is apparently not necessary when you teach littles. I taught elementary for 14 years. Trust me, it is hard and it takes skills and training. And then why is this negotiable? But, I'm also saying, from a state like Michigan, where less than half of our libraries are staffed by certified school librarians, but our prisons all have certified librarians. but our schools do not. So again, you are not alone. Yes, Sarah.
I do want to also point out, as librarians, we often do our own advocating for what we need and getting the support and, jumping into classrooms and stuff like that. And there are scholarships available for people. It's not always reliable just on your district. And so there are scholarships that you can apply for that they'll cover part of the cost for either travel or lodging or the conferences themselves.
100%. The Library of Michigan has a travel grant, and I was able to go to AASL in Salt Lake City because of the state of Michigan's library program. And by the way, that also offset my trip to Rome this summer. Same grant. A couple years later, I applied for it again, and I was able to travel. It purchased part of that plane ticket. And I will say a shout out to San Jose, because I met a couple of your instructors in Rome, and I was like, this is really cool. All of a sudden, this is all coming together, friends, all coming together. When I think back to the first 5 years that I was working in the school library, I was barely one step ahead of my students. It is no exaggeration when I say I drove home absolutely stunned. I was shell-shocked from a day that never let up. And I know listeners are nodding their heads because we've all been there. And it's just like you never came up for air. And I am absolutely in awe of the four of you who decided during this very sort of whirlwind of a career change, what is it that allowed you to sort of allocate bandwidth and time in your very busy schedules to do this? So, let's go ahead. Cybele, can I ask you to let us know, how is it you were able to squeeze this in with all the other things that you're busy doing?
It's a really good question. Both the part-time student, part-time librarian, and then this program. But I mean, it was just making a schedule and sticking to it. It was I had a very scheduled life and it's still that way for school. So that's how I did it. Structure and schedule. That's the same way. That's the same way it is at work for me, because I have 26 classes. 13, they rotate every other week. So I have 13 classes a week. I am part-time. So it's constant, and I have to be scheduled and ready, and who's coming when, what are their needs. That's the only way it works.
Oh, that's amazing. How about you, Sarah? What was your trick for managing to get everything done in a timely fashion? Because apparently you had deadlines.
A lot of late nights, just drinking lots of coffee. No, I feel like it was really helpful for me to go through this experience. I learned so much through creating and developing these activities and scenarios and diving deeper into the standards. My very first year as a librarian in a brand new district with a brand new school, all new people to meet, was the year that everything shut down from COVID. And so, and then the next 2 years were kind of a blur as everyone's trying to figure out what to do and how to do school, how to do library. And so I really felt like last year was my first true full year, getting to do what I love to do, getting to just bring the magic to schools. And so being part of this group, yes, it was a lot of work, but man, did I learn so much, and did I get so many great ideas from the standards, from developing these activities, but also by going to these conferences and learning from other librarians as well. So yes, it was really hard, but I feel like I gained so much from it.
So Brittany, how about you? What was the secret to getting everything done in a timely fashion?
Well, who needs sleep when you're working on something you're really passionate about, right? No, I say that and I'm totally kidding. When I look back on how much time was devoted to this weekly, I think for me, and there were some weeks that were exceptions, but on average, it was probably about 4 hours a week. And that would include our Zoom meeting times, which sometimes were every other week. And then once we got down to some of those deadlines and crunch time, it was every week. So I think people should know that, yes, it is a lot of work, but it's manageable. What was also really entertaining for us is when we were doing our poster session at the ALA conference in the summer, we had so many of the other emerging leader groups come over to us, and they were like, holy cow, the amount of work that you guys did for your specific project does not even compare to what we did. And I'm not saying that as, an insult to their projects in any way. I just think school librarians work at a different level. We are super efficient. And so we cranked it out. We got it done. And for people who are passionate about it, you're going to be able to do that too.
Well, and what's really important is being able to share this conversation with listeners around the world. I think when you work this hard on something together, that an even larger audience of school librarians are going to be able to benefit from all that work that you put into it. Brandi, how about you? You are an incredibly committed person to a lot of things. Would you let us know, how is it that you found time to get this all done?
So looking back, it's a bit of a blur because it was year 2 for me. So it was a lot. I would not probably recommend doing it year 2. But honestly, I think like the biggest selling point I could say is that it's not like your college group work. Like these are like really amazing ladies that I work with that I feel like also like just, honestly, I'm like type A. I was that person who like did a lot of the group work in college and stuff like that, had bad group experiences. And I feel like in this experience, everyone was amazing. And obviously, we're all trying to put our best work forward, but I think we also inspired each other to really work even harder than maybe we would normally. And so I think that just the experience of working together with equally passionate people and like just learning from each other really just made the experience entirely worth it.
I'm having a moment. I'm getting very emotional. Friends, I think so many of us, librarians, we were that person in high school who carried the group. We were the person who would do the whole thing and let somebody else take part in that credit. And you're right, when you get the opportunity, and it is a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with other school librarians. It's like we're all on the same team here, and we all have very high expectations of ourselves. So as part of the Emerging Leader Program, all 4 of you had to go to both the mid-year LibLearnX conference, which was in New Orleans, and then you also attended the ALA's annual conference this past summer. Specifically, I'm asking about mid-year because I've never attended mid-year, and I know a lot of librarians for whom this is just, it doesn't rise to the occasion. Would you let listeners who are tuning in, especially those of us in the United States, what is it about attending mid-year that you found valuable? So let's go ahead. I'd like to start off with Brittany, please. What about mid-year made this a great opportunity to go?
So that was my first national conference for ALA. So I was experiencing it before, ever being to an annual, and I was really impressed by it. I was impressed with the number of school library focused sessions, because going in, I really was unsure how much of that, might be offered. However, I tried to run around and attend, sessions not only for secondary, but also for elementary, so I could share that with other librarians in my district. But I also think that in particular, right now is such a valuable time for librarians to be attending conferences together to remember that we are not alone in all of the struggles that we're facing. Sarah and I are from Missouri, where there is a lot of legislation and other issues going on in our state. And a school librarian can feel very isolated because sometimes we might be the only ones in our building. And even the school library experience is different than the experience of other librarians, whether they're public or academic. However, to go to conferences and to be able to just feel rejuvenated at a time when we are facing so much scrutiny was incredible. So I loved it.
How about you, Cybele? What was it about going to LibLearnX that really sort of affirmed this decision to be part of this group?
Well, LibLearnX was my first experience at a library conference. I thought that thinking about comparing it to ALA, for those of us who might have a bit of anxiety around the largesse of such a conference as which I did, I think Live, Learn, X is really very much more easy to digest. It's not so overwhelming. But to add to what Brittany was saying, I also want to say that I think it's really important for librarians to attend a conference that has other kinds of librarians there, because I really think it's important for libraries overall to have better connections. School libraries should be better connected to the public libraries and academic libraries, because if we're training them to be good library citizens and be comfortable in libraries and let our students and learners know that the library is a place for them, then they will go through the rest of their school career, however long that career is, and they will feel comfortable in libraries. And if we can make better connections between the types of libraries, we can sort of shepherd and support our learners to, just graduate through the types of libraries that there are.
I like that you compare it to ALA, because for friends, if I'm not sure of the exact stats, but I know that ALA annual, I believe that the attendance regularly reaches 15,000 librarians of all walks. And I think it is the world's largest assembly of librarians ever. So let's go ahead. How about you, Brandi? What was it about, mid-year that you liked?
I think looking at it from a different angle, I personally am a very shy, quiet person, and I use library conferences as an opportunity to try to push myself outside of my box, because I feel, again, librarians are great people, and so I feel more comfortable to try to express myself more. And I think that Live, Learn, X lends itself to that very well, because since it is a smaller atmosphere, I think that, and I would say there's more breaks in the schedule, so things are a little bit more laissez-faire. And unlike, annual is awesome, but it is go, go, go. And so I think that with Live, Learn, X, it really creates space and opportunity for librarians to just network and have conversations together and just learning through networking, which I think is always a great way to get new ideas for what to do in your own space and to learn from others. And just to have those, Cybele was talking about, just have those relationship building conversations with different library types, because we have so much that we can learn from other library types and apply to our own. And yeah.
Wow. And Sara, what about you? What were your thoughts on mid-year?
I think everyone kind of shared a lot of the same sentiments that I do, being able to network, being able to meet new people. I mean, being surrounded by school librarians, we're pretty cool people. And so just being able to meet so many people was amazing. But one thing that I think is amazing is the marketplace and having all of the authors there. And oh my goodness, I just fangirled the whole time, because you were like, I've read your book, you had such a big impact on me. And then what I can do, authors are real people, but you don't always think that they're real people. I was taking selfies with them, and then I shared them with my students, and I was like, you remember this book that you loved? This is the author. They took the time and to talk to me, and they signed the book, and they signed it to us as our school. And just being able to share that love of books and reading and put a face to the book, and I think it makes a big difference. So when I brought all of that back to the kids, they were just in awe of that experience, and being able to to see that. Now, I also do like the morning announcements for my school, and every day we do a joke of the day, and often the kids will come up with the jokes. And if they don't, I come up with something really corny. But, some of the people that I met there, like I got a couple of really good jokes from authors and illustrators and other librarians. And they were all just really great sports, and I really appreciated it.
I love that. Oh, that's fantastic. So let's stick with Sara here for a minute. I'm wondering, because I don't think so, but did you have to present anything at mid-year? And am I right, this was the first time you were all getting together for the first time in person?
Yeah. So the very first day that we were there, it was a full day of the four of us, and then we had some people, like Courtney came in, who was kind of our librarian support person. She we learned a lot about like how we are as workers, how we work together, how we work well with each other, how we are as leaders, our work ethics, just learning a lot about each other and what it means to be a leader. And so having that full day together, and again, it was the first day that any of us met each other, and then we got like our big project, and we were all like, oh my goodness, what did we get ourselves into? We were just there to engage with each other and learn from each other and soak it all in so that we can then prepare for the next conference.
Brandi, when you were at LibLearnX, at this point, you had not started your project, which means the project that you all presented in July came together in the months of February to July. That's incredible. So, I'm curious, would you give us an idea of what happened in being at mid-year? What else helped you sort of propel yourselves into this project headlong, with fervor?
To be absolutely honest, it was great to meet everyone at LibLearnX, but when we were presented with our project, we got this 8.5 by 11 standard piece of paper size paper of our schedule, and it was literally broken down by week from January until June, and it was a lot. It was a lot, to say the least, of just being introduced to it, not really being sure yet exactly what we were doing. We had a general idea. We had seen some of the work of past groups that had worked with AASL. So we had a general idea. So I think that at that first meeting, we were honestly just trying to get our heads around what was expected of us. So we actually had a bit of a slower start where we kind of just focused our beginning weeks of just really getting to know the AASL standards. Me personally, we have California standards. They are outdated and need to be updated, but that is what I tend to rely on. And so it was a great opportunity to just take the first weeks of our project to really start diving into those standards, because I personally use them a lot more regularly now.
Cybele, I'm hoping you'll help listeners understand, between LibLearnX and June, the end of June, when all of this came together in time for the annual conference, you're looking at all of these tasks. How did you sort of break down what each of you were going to do so that you could meet these deadlines without sort of reproducing what the other one was doing? What did you do to make this a more efficient use of your time?
The inquiry activities, we divided them up, and we worked on activities per our area, and we kept in good communication, asking each other questions. The ladies on my team had so much more experience, as far as teaching than I did. Even though I do have part of a teaching credential, they have so much more experience. It was always knew that I could turn to them and ask questions. And we gave each other feedback and asked questions of each other on the activities that we came up with. And so that was helpful that is what allowed us to build the huge document that is the activity guide.
Well, and so let me ask Brittany, Cybele sort of alluded to this idea that each of you have different individual strengths. Can you sort of, during this time between January and June, how do you feel that you were able to pull on the strengths that you each had and brought to the team effort?
Yeah, so we did really feel lucky that 2 of us have experience at the secondary level and 2 of us have experience at the elementary level. And when we were splitting up those activities, we often tried to make sure, because there are, 4 different focus areas. So we would have 1 secondary and 1 elementary of us librarians working on each of those areas. And we had different milestones that we had to hit. So, we came up with an outline for the activities, and then we had to write activities. And then we took a step back and wrote the scenarios that helped to introduce the activities. And then there were other parts like the introduction, and we had a resource matrix. And I look back at my calendar, I think we met 13 times virtually for an hour and a half. But obviously that was more like debriefing or looking over and editing pieces. A lot of the actual writing we had to do on our own time. But then it really felt like all eyes were on all pieces so that we could weigh in and help revise and edit for each other. So it really was a team process throughout.
I can't think of anything I've ever done which could compare to the experience you all have just had. And I've been teaching since 1992. So, friends, I'm going to be very, very, very vulnerable and candid. This sounds like a relationship. You all have I think the 4 of you have put in more heart and soul into being part of this team than a lot of people do on most projects they have and undertake collaboratively with another person, let alone 3 other people. Wow, I am so blown away. Let's focus on sort of this culmination. It came together at ALA Annual in Chicago this past summer. You presented a poster session. I love poster sessions because it sort of harkens to this idea of being at that science fair when you were little and you stood at a table with your triptych and you got to talk to people about the things that you learned. And you got to do this together as a group, coming together as sort of a reunion of some sort because you'd all worked together over the past half year together. Let's talk about this resource guide. I'm going to start with Brandi. Can you tell listeners, because you've so generously taken all of the work that you've done this past year, shared it out with the world. Brandi, could you let us know a little bit about what are some of the takeaways that our listeners are going to be able to see when they look at your 80-page document, which is substantial?
Well, so just to give a brief overview of the guide itself. So for the last several years, AASL has tasked emerging leader groups with creating these activity guides that really looks at the standards that were released, I believe, in 2017. I might be getting that date wrong, and looking at them and making them more accessible for teacher librarians when they walk in the door. Like we know, reading them on the page, they can be a little bit hard to digest. In fact, when we started our project, we devoted one of our Zoom sessions specifically to just looking at the standards, making sure we conceptually understood them prior to even diving into the project itself. So the guide really takes the standards and makes them easy to use. So looking at the guide itself, there are scenarios that give teacher librarians an idea of when they might think about using some of these activities. And the activities themselves are really like mini lesson plans different activities that you can use straight out of the book to teach inquiry and to embed inquiry straight into your library program today.
How about you, Brittany? I really appreciate is the incredibly detailed table of contents, because when it comes to access to information, librarians don't waste time. And the fact that this 80-page guide is broken down and the table of contents is really going to work for our users, how else do you feel this guide has been arranged to support busy lives of school librarians?
Yeah, the table of contents is going to be a great starting point, because you can consider, what perspective are you coming from in order to find an activity, because it is arranged by learner, librarian, and then school library. If you're thinking more about the culture of your library and activities that you can promote within your atmosphere, but then, and we can't take full credit for this idea, in the back there's also a resource matrix, and the emerging leaders group that worked before us, they did come up with that concept, but then we tried to perfect it even a little bit by including what are the activities that use certain resources that we have hyperlinked in there, because if I'm just looking for new online content or new resources that I've never heard of, I could go straight to that resource matrix, browse the list, and then look over across the column to see, oh, okay, I just need to go look at this specific learner lesson to see how I could apply it. And you kind of have a little, in-library activity or lesson to apply on the spot.
That's so intuitive. Sarah, whenever I have put something together, there's always something in it that I just feel so incredibly proud of. Can you share with listeners, when you reflect back on this experience, you have to feel a great sense of pride when you look at this guide that has been so generously shared out. Forgive me, but not everything that our organizations do we put out for free. By which I mean, here's the link and here's everything you four did. You could have published this as a book and all of a sudden we'd be out $45. So Sarah, what is it about this finished product that you really feel proud about?
I mean, I feel just proud of the sheer magnitude of what we were able to accomplish together, and being able to present it and then connect with people through it. Along with the activity guide and the resource matrix, we also developed an infographic. And I remember us sitting together talking and trying to draw things out on my iPad, and it looks just horrible. But then we kind of talked through it, and then group at AASL made it look beautiful, and it shared all the different information that we wanted to share. And then, we also created a video that goes along with it. That's just a bit, it's 6 minutes of an intro of why this is important and why we should bring inquiry into libraries and schools, and sharing our essential questions. The sheer magnitude of what we were able to accomplish in that short time. I mean, Brittany, you said it was only 13 times that we met. It felt like so much more, but I think it was just us spending so much time together and just so invested in it.
Wow. I'm just that, you're right. And anytime you put 80 pages together of anything, you're like, whoa, that's impressive. So, Cybele, I knew I wanted to ask, you mentioned that you teach littles, and there are many people tuning in right now who teach our littlest littles. And when you say inquiry, I'm kind of yeah, but how does a 4 or 5-year-old really identify with inquiry? But could you give listeners an idea, as a teacher of littles, as a school librarian of littles, how is it that this resource would positively impact and have an opportunity to resonate with our youngest of patrons?
Wow, Amy, that's such a great question. Wow, what do you think? That is how I approach it with littles. That we have to, first and foremost, foster the idea with them that asking questions are so out and being able to ask a question is so important. And that they're not going to be shut down when they do. So I don't know if the guide went below kinder. I don't think it did. But working with preschool and TK, that's the most important thing with them, is just making sure that you hold space for the questions that they have. And in my library, something I've done to foster asking questions, which is inquiry-based learning, asking questions and letting the student guide the learning in a sense. One thing I've done in my library is a program called the Big Questions program. So if a student asks a question either in a classroom or during a library time, what I do is I say, what a great question. That's a big question. So you're going to come back to the library. I'm going to spend 20 minutes with you showing you the resources that answer your question. And you get a little prize packet too. You get a library tote and, all the little prizes inside. So we have to encourage inquiry by accepting the questions. And if we don't have the time at that moment to say, I can answer your question, make sure you follow up with that student and answer their question and take the time and value them for asking questions, because there's going to be another student there having the same question.
Oh, absolutely. You've all shared this incredibly unique experience, one which very, very few of us will ever have the opportunity to experience ourselves. Would you share with us personally how you feel you'll benefit from being a part of this emerging leader program? Because I know there are listeners who are in the first 5 years of their profession as school librarians and could very much see themselves participating in a program like this. Let's go ahead and start with Brittany. What's your takeaway?
So one of the really cool things that the Emerging Leaders program did for us is before our poster session at the ALA conference, they also spent quite a bit of time talking about how we now need to be leaders in the greater library community. And so they talked about how you can get involved in ALA or AASL or with your state library organization. I personally decided to pursue that. So now I help with a diversity book club for our Missouri Library Association, and I've joined AASL. I'm on the new member committee. We're just getting started, so I don't quite know what that looks like yet. But, those big national organizations are always looking for people to volunteer their time. And so that was one of my biggest takeaways, is just, not letting the experience stop here, but to continue to invest in library organizations and stay involved.
Well, and hands down, not all of those require that you meet every other week and produce an 80-page document. So
right.
I think once you run the gauntlet of being an emerging leader, like all of a sudden the rest of these obligations are going to seem somewhat sort of, you can put them in that perspective. How about you, Cybele? What's your big takeaway having done this now and reflecting on it? How do you see this altering your trajectory?
Absolutely. As a school librarian that doesn't have a lot of resources in terms of professional development at the moment, having some place to go, AASL materials are really good for that lone librarian who is out there like me. This experience overall, obviously, has taught me a lot. Just being able to access those materials is golden, because otherwise, where would I go? Who answers my questions about what do I do to teach this? How can I engage students this way? AASL materials are really, really good around that. And so I would say to any librarian, school librarian who's feeling out there and not sure knowing what to do, access those materials, go there and look at them. They really support us.
Absolutely. How about you, Brandi? I mean, this has been basically a year of your life, and how have you come out of it a better school librarian?
I think as a school librarian, from completing the project itself, I can see a personal growth in my teaching and how I approach curriculum building and lesson planning. I think that the project itself really pushed me as an educator, and I can see the growth and the rewards, and I can see how inquiry is such a much bigger part of my program now. And I think in like the larger library world, I think, as something you say a lot, Amy, I think we're better together, and this experience has given us opportunities to be in bigger spaces, to meet different people, learn from other people. And I think that having the title as an emerging leader has also changed like how my admin looks at me and like my role at my site. And I think that it's a great experience across the board. And I would really recommend that that people, if you have the time, to look into it, because I've learned and grown so much from it.
You know, Sara, I mean, you've been through a lot, and you're looking at this next school year, and you've got this past you. You know, how does this change you as a school librarian?
You know, getting this deep dive into the AASL standards has been huge. Like y'all were saying, developing new curriculum. And from doing this work, being able to advocate better for the library and say, this is why inquiry is such an important piece in our students' learning. And these are some of the activities. And by the way, here's a cool video and infographic for you to look at. So just being able to advocate for the librarians, share with other librarians in my district, and then connect with other school librarians as well has just been such a great opportunity, because often we are the only ones in our school. And, you know, we have different standards and professional development within the built-in professional learning community at our schools doesn't always fit to librarians per se. So, you know, understanding, like Brittany said, ways to get involved, ways to reach out. It was really cool. Brittany and I met up again at our state library, school library conference, and we found like several other past emerging leaders, and we all took a big picture together, and it was just one great, like, welcome home kind of a piece. So meeting other emerging leaders, getting involved.
Oh, I love that. What would you tell somebody who should apply?
You know, go for it. You know, you're going to learn so much from this experience. You're going to meet so many amazing people. You're going to work really hard and have late nights, but it's definitely worth it.
How about you, Brandi? What would you tell somebody who would definitely do well participating in this program?
We're librarians. We believe in lifelong learning. Throw yourself at the opportunity, because honestly, I can't really think of any negatives from the experience. Everything about it was great.
Awesome. Cybele, what would you tell somebody who's like on the fence? They're like, I'm not sure I should do it.
You know, the application process isn't that difficult. You might as well. If you don't get in, you don't get in, and you can try the next year. But just as my colleagues here have said, that there really weren't any negatives about the experience. So it's worth a try.
Brittany, no, you get the last say here. Somebody's on the fence about applying for this program.
Yeah, you know, I don't think school librarians often question our impact within our buildings, because we get to see the daily interactions with kids. We get to hear from teachers, you know, just how important a lesson that we did was, or an experience that we offered. But if you are really looking for a way to get involved in library work outside of your school, beyond your district, this is something you can really be proud of and have a great impact on the library community within our country.
I am so grateful all of you were able to join us today. You know, I know that there are listeners who would like to take advantage of the resources that you have so generously shared. Friends, we're going to be putting our social media links into the show notes and hopefully maybe share a little bit about your library. But, you know, would you let listeners know how we can reach you if we want to follow you on social media? Cybele, do you have a preferred way for listeners to see what you're doing in your program?
Yeah, sure. I have a Medium page, so I'll put the link down for that.
So how about you, Sara? Do you have a way that listeners can see what you're doing on social media?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and they're both Sal the Librarian. So my initials, Librarian.
Awesome. So how about you, Brittany? All right. What can we see if we go onto social media when it comes to your program?
Sure, I would love it if you wanted to follow me just like my students on Instagram, and my handle is at MHS Librarian Sharitz.
Excellent. And I'll ask you, Brandi, where can we see all the exciting things you're doing?
You can follow me professionally on Twitter at Veal_Brandi, or you can follow my library's Instagram at DC_library.
Outstanding. I wish you all a fantastic school year. You know, it sounds like you have absolutely grown from this experience and you have exciting careers ahead of you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. One last friendly reminder, friends, use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more, and librarians who book their very first Literati book fair for this upcoming school year and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card to Tidal Wave. Visit the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team to see if you qualify. The topic of our next episode will be Being IA Ready, and my conversation with Dr. Kay O'Doney. I hope you will tune in.